probably close. That. Mm, okay. Welcome in to the Please Stay Inside podcast. My name is Rob. This is episode number 8. We are joined today by Breanne Cooke. Breanne is a self-esteem and resilience coach based in the UK who has worked in the mental health field in several different capacities. You can find her on TikTok and YouTube at This is Breanne Cooke. Breanne, welcome on.
Hello, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really pleased to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What is it that you do on a regular basis? Yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so uh, I do a few different things. So about a year ago, I set up my own business, and there's 3 different parts to it. So I have a gift shop. It's a physical gift shop and an online gift shop where I sell kind of feel good, positivity type gifts. Uh, and I am a self-esteem and resilience coach, and I also do mindful photography workshops.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so those are and there's online courses as well in the pipeline, but those are the 3 main parts of my business at the moment.
Wow. That's a lot to have to try to manage. Three different three different aspects.
It's a lot, but it's difficult. I'm passionate about all of them, so
Mm.
it is hard sometimes to know where to turn my attention. But I'm loving it, enjoying every step of the way.
I love that. Which one of these, I guess, came first out of curiosity?
What came first? To be honest, I started the study for the resilience coaching first, and then as I was waiting to finish that, I just felt like I couldn't stay in the job I was in any longer.
Hmm.
So I opened up the gift shop. So even though the coaching study came first, the gift shop came second, but it was the first thing that was actually kind of live, so to speak. Um, and then the coaching and mindful photography came after that.
Okay. Awesome, awesome. I'm curious because I know what goes into the professional counselor position here in the States. I'm curious what goes into like the resiliency coaching in the UK. What does that process look like?
So it varies wildly depending on what coaching provider you go with and what
Hmm.
organization. But for me, I went with an organization called Wellness Professionals at Work, and their system for me was it was 18 study modules.
Hmm.
Each one of those 18 modules had an assignment to go with it, and then there was 50 skills hours, so practice hours with your fellow course students, and then after that there was 50 practice hours with people that were
Hmm.
kind enough to be your clients, and
Hmm.
then lots of kind of write-ups and reflections on those. So it's
Hmm.
quite intense actually. It took
Yeah.
about 2 years to do.
Okay. Those role plays can be really, really intense. That's a part of my training that I remember very vividly. What was it like for you?
They are intense because they're not quite real, are they?
Right.
Like they're not real people. Mostly people bring real things
Hmm.
to have coaching on, but you're still aware that it's not quite real life and you're being observed sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's a bit nerve-wracking, I think, but yeah, it's a good experience still. I think you learn a lot
Hmm.
through that process.
Yeah, definitely. Especially through that observation part. Like that's I think the worst part about it is being observed and like knowing that somebody is right there watching and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely get a lot of really wonderful experience from people being able to notice you and all of that. Even when it comes to just like some of if you say like a lot or a lot of ums and then you break down every little bit of how you communicate. It's a really wonderful process.
Yeah, you just have to go in and just accept that you can't be
Hmm.
perfect and take it just as a learning experience,
Hmm.
and that you'll get the most from it.
Okay, that's a good point. I like that. I like that. So I'm curious, what is it that led to you becoming a resilience coach? I know it's kind of it's not as simple as, a day and night type of thing, but what is it that I guess first started that getting that ball rolling?
First of all, I actually thought I was managing a mental health education service. It's called Recovery College. It's based on a personal recovery movement, which, if you go back in American history, you'll find is quite strong as well, the
Mm,
personal recovery movement. And I was managing a team of people, and I originally thought that I was going to do a coaching course because that might help me be a better manager, be a better supervisor,
mm,
etc., etc. And then during the process, I don't know if it's the same for you, but you can, as other students around you are practicing, they need their hours, you can volunteer
mhm,
as a coachee as well. So I actually had coaching through that process as well. And the coach that I had was incredible, actually. But what she made me realize was, is not that, I thought I had imposter syndrome, I needed to be better at my job. What she made me realize is actually it wasn't the job for me.
mm,
I was no longer happy. That's not what I wanted. It didn't really align with my values anymore.
mhm.
So I missed, my background is in social work, so I missed that kind of one-to-one work. And
Right.
a lot of the work I did in social work, every case you come across, it's always kind of underlying everything is kind of self-esteem and resilience. And you see incredible, courageous people having to make huge changes in their lives and being able to help people through that. I realized is something that I've been doing for quite a while anyway, through social work. So I thought, I wanted to be more autonomous. I wanted to go back to one work, and I wanted to be more authentic to myself really and see if I
Mm,
could build my own business. So, and then what happened? Then my mum died,
mm,
and you know, inevitably, as somebody dies, you think, oh, life is really short, and depending on your beliefs, you think, you know, one life perhaps, unless you believe in the afterlife. So I thought, you know what, there's no more waiting, and
mhm.
that's when I just went. I quit my job, opened a shop with the intention that the coaching, once I'd finished, would go alongside it.
Wow. And I mean, sometimes it takes those kinds of moments to really put things into perspective and get us
Yeah.
to think a little bit about what is it that I really value? What is it that I love? What would make me happy in my life? Oh.
Uh, yeah, the values work is really important. I think if anybody hasn't kind of done values work, I would really recommend it because you do really figure out who you are. And sometimes
Mm,
I know that I think I don't know whether I was trying to fit in or whether I was pretending quite a lot or whether I wanted the managerial job. I don't know what it was, but doing that values work and revisiting that just really made me realize I wasn't actually being too authentic to myself. So
mm.
it helped
Interesting.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it that you feel like kind of leads people astray from their values? What is it that people can sometimes get caught in that pulls them away from that?
I think it's the I don't know how political to get, but I think it's just the pressures of everyday life and
Hmm.
community. There's so much divide in communities in England, and from what I observe, America as well.
For
And
sure.
people are really struggling to pay their rent. They're choosing between eating or putting their heating on.
Hmm.
Even if they work full time, they can't always afford the basics for their families.
Hmm.
So I just don't think that society always gives you time, and then the privilege to be able to sometimes pursue other things
Hmm.
because you just survive, right?
Right.
You've got to get through life. So um, I would say it's pressures of society.
That's a really good point. That's a very good point. I mean, like you said, that need to survive is paramount to everything. I mean, if we aren't alive, then it doesn't really matter if I'm doing what I love. It doesn't matter if am representing who I am in my everyday life. And so, yeah, a lot of those needs do certainly get in the way, and unfortunately, I can imagine keep a lot of people from being able to go about doing the things that they love and being able to represent themselves in the work that they do every day. For you, I guess, what is it that so you have this really unfortunate experience of losing your mom, and you, I suppose, begin the grieving process, and I guess at what point in that process did it really kind of hit you that, this is what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to open this gift shop. I'm going to get this process going. I think I'm ready to get this going.
Yeah, I took some time off work to kind of contemplate. Like losing my mum really did hit me quite hard. I had a lot of anger. So
Mm-hmm.
my family is religious. I grew up in um, as a Mormon, um,
Mm-hmm.
and when my mum was dying, she didn't know whether she was going to heaven or not.
Wow.
Um, and you know what? I found myself going through a lot of anger for an institution that would make people so fearful of not being able to go to heaven, when she's like she was the most nicest, most
Mm-hmm.
giving person. So I had a lot of anger for this organization, this religious organization, and I think a lot of people experience this as well. Like, meaning for me completely disappeared. So
Mm-hmm.
I cared for her for quite a few months before she died, and it was it was very hard, but I found it quite a privileged thing to do, and there was a lot of meaning in caring for her. And then after she died, I did reevaluate life and think, well, what is actually meaningful? And I found that I'd lost all meaning and purpose, and I was so ambivalent about life. I really didn't care
Mm-hmm.
whether I was living or not, because what was the
Right.
point anyway? What's the point? So I took some time off work to really try and take time to figure out what was meaningful and what changes could impact my mental health in a more positive way. And part of that, I think, was getting rid of the job that I was in. I had to do something different. So that became a priority quite quickly for me, because
Mm-hmm.
if I was living life to the full, then it didn't mean being in that job for me.
Yeah.
Even though, and this is where the paradox comes in, the work itself was meaningful, and the work helps so many people. And I'm not underestimating when I say it literally saves lives. It does. But
Yeah.
I'd done my time there, and I needed something different.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so you were in that position the entire time you were also caring for mom?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
So I lived about an hour and 15 minutes from my mum. So my mum
Wow.
had a certain amount of care from the NHS that was free. Um, but there were 4 days of the week that she didn't have. So
Mm.
myself and my sister would get up at 6 a.m. where I lived, on a Wednesday, drive to my parents, look after. I would try and work from home when my sister cared for her, and we'd do overnight care, and then we'd come home on Sunday, and we did that every week for several months.
Wow. What was
So
that
yeah,
like?
it was intense. It
I
was it
bet.
was an, it was really intense, because my sister and I were both sleeping in the living room. No beds or anything. Getting up in the middle of the night 3 or 4 times to help my mum, then trying to work during the day and trying to
Mm.
do your managerial bits, have meetings in your parents' bedroom to
Mm-hmm.
so it was private. So there was a lot to handle, as well as the emotions. And when someone's dying, the dynamics of the whole family shift, and as the
Right.
people are trying to figure out what their emotions are. um, so you're trying to fit in with several people's different way of
Mm-hmm.
the anticipatory grief and the way they're coping with care. So challenging, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're trying to work with what everybody else's needs are, and then you're trying to meet mom's needs, and then you also have just the dynamic of shifting who the caregiver is now, which I imagine is a difficult thing to get used to.
Yeah, it's really hard when you always know it's coming, that the tables
Mm.
will turn, and that you will eventually, your parents will need some care, or they'll need to be looked after. But yeah, I don't think you quite realize until you have to then step into that position.
Mm. Right. Do you have any insight that you can offer for people who find themselves in that position? I know, with time comes age, and especially, I think with the pandemic, a lot of people are very aware of health, and people can sometimes take a turn. And so I wonder if you have any insight for people who find themselves in a position where now they are the caregivers for their parents or whoever was taking care of them.
Yeah, what would I say? That's an interesting question. I'd say, first of all, you have to look after yourself. You hear it all
Hmm.
the time, don't you, about people burning out. If you don't look after yourself, then how can
Right.
you look after others? But it really is so true. Um, so use your support network as much as you can. But also I think mindset is really important. So I have a tendency to catastrophize,
Mm,
um,
me
and
too.
I think, yeah. So when someone's ill, I think you can go from, here to like
Mhm,
there really, really quickly.
mhm.
And for a period of time, I was really interested in Stoicism, right? I was reading a lot about Stoicism,
Yeah.
and the main thing I took from Stoicism in terms of mindset is don't embellish. So, you know, what can you see is happening? So, my mum was ill, and that particular day she was ill, but not to take any further. Don't embellish the facts. Don't add any story of
Mhm,
my own to it. Just take it as it comes, take it as it is, the presentation as it is,
mhm,
instead of turning a story in my head to something that perhaps wasn't there yet, increasing anxiety, increasing the stress. So that was really important for me. I had to remind myself of that every
mhm.
day. Yes, she's struggling, but in an hour she might not be. She
Right.
was, and don't add my own stuff to it.
Right. Like you said, dealing with that present moment as things are and not adding another narrative to it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And that's it's a big thing in mindfulness as well, which I mindfulness is a huge thing for me that I have always found to be pretty helpful for myself because I, like you, I do a lot of catastrophizing. Um, I know just recently, we had gotten some really bad news about one of our dogs having a health condition.
Mm.
And when we first got that news, my mind immediately went to, because they gave us a span of time, it's a mild case, we're in the early stages of it. Um, and so, there's a chance that he lives for another 8 years. There's also a chance that, he doesn't make it to the summer. And of course, which of those two do you feel is more emotionally salient? It's the summer. And so, jumping right into that mindset, it's like you're going through the grieving process before the loss even happens, um, which I know has been, it was something that I worked through and I'm still working through day to day. Um,
Mm.
yeah, there's so much wisdom in trying to kind of stay with the moment and stay with where things are at. Um, so I guess, were there things about you that you kind of learned about yourself in this process as you're trying to, take care of mom, you're trying to meet other people's needs, you're trying to work this job, you're trying to take care of yourself. Were there things that you came to find out about you?
Oh gosh, what did I find out about me? Well, I was really scared because previously I had really severe panic attacks, which were kind of related to deaths, and
Mm,
I honestly was again catastrophizing. When we found out my mum had about 8 months to live, I I was like, well, how am I going to do this? I thought that I wouldn't be able to talk to any doctors. I thought that I wouldn't be able to care without crumbling. I honestly thought that I couldn't do it.
yeah.
Um, but then it reminds me of resilience, that actually um, people, not just me, everybody is so incredibly resilient, and they have so much more strength than I think people know that they have. Um, so I think to know that you do have strength in there, but you have to lean on others.
Mm,
So I did learn that I don't always like to lean on other people. I don't always like to ask for what I need, because that is a hard thing to learn, isn't it?
yes.
But I did learn during that time that I needed to learn to ask for what I needed, and it was difficult, but I could do it, and I've
Hmm.
learned that.
That's amazing.
Uh,
It sounds like that made a pretty big difference for you, being able to lean on others.
yeah, a massive difference, but also self-compassion.
Yes.
I again, something I really struggled with, but I've learned that you can beat yourself up. So say if my mom was trying to say her I got to have pills to her like 10 minutes late, you can really beat yourself up. But then the self-compassion is, you are doing the absolute best you can. You love her, you're doing this with so
Hmm.
much compassion. So be compassionate towards yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so that's another skill that I had to learn during that time, which I haven't been so great at in the past as well.
Mm, I hear you. I mean, and I really do appreciate you sharing your story with us. I know this isn't always the easiest thing in the world to talk about, but I really appreciate you sharing that. Um, and I love the focus on intention when it comes to self-compassion, like that I am doing the best that I can. There's no way in the world that I would be trying to do anything other than the best that I can right now. Um, and being able to kind of focus on that and yeah, where you're at with that intention. So, kind of shifting over to this idea of resilience, because this is what you do on a day to day, this is what you're passionate about. What does resilience mean to you?
This is it's a really interesting question because it can mean lots of different things. But there's a resilience expert in the UK called Chris Johnston that I did like an 8-week masterclass, and I have actually adopted his definition because it's the
Mhm.
best one I found and I really like. So it's because people always say resilience is about bouncing back, right? But it's not. That's such a it's it's misleading because even though there's a part about resilience which is bouncing back, which is being able to go back to a state that you were before something happened, you've got to realize that you can't always do that. If you
Mm.
have a mental health challenge, um, there's a good chance that you won't ever um, be exactly the person who you were. You'll be different, but maybe there'll be things that you've gained. You've gained new skills, new resources, new connections. There's so much more you've gained, but sometimes you can't return exactly where you were. So I was saying it's being able to either bounce back or cope with and adapt and think flexibly around adversity and challenges that come your way, and just being able to manage and cope with them in a way that's best for you at the time.
I like that definition, and I like that you added in the portion of not trying to go back to who you were, because I imagine it's a place where a lot of people can get stuck. Um, how do you how do you imagine people can work with that when they find that tendency to want to, they're so transfixed on like, well, I used to be able to do this, I used to be this person, I used to have all these things, and I want to go back to that. How do we kind of work with that process?
Yeah, well, I can give you a personal story if that
Sure.
might help illustrate it. So, back in 2014, I was a social worker for a children's hospice, and uh, up to that point, I was completely fine. I hadn't really experienced any mental health challenges up to that point, to be honest. And when I was facilitating a bereaved parents group, I had my first ever panic attack, and
Mm,
um, and that just spiraled. I was having severe panic attacks every day. I wasn't sleeping. I wouldn't sleep for perhaps 2 or 3 days in a row, and it was hard. It was a really challenging period of time. I don't know how I did it. I'd always show up to work every day, but I couldn't guarantee that I'd see the day out. It might
right.
be sometimes I could just last an hour and I'd be like, no, I can't. I got to go home.
Hmm.
Um, but that for me, loss and bereavement has been a huge part of my life. It's been really important to me, and that was the job that I thought that I would do forever because um, bereavement and loss means so much to me. Um, but I had to leave that job, and there's no way that I could have gone back. And before then, I was confident. I didn't have any mental health challenges. I could do kind of speeches in front of 500 plus people and not even be nervous. Then I
Hmm.
went to having panic attacks every time I had to speak in public.
Hmm.
Sometimes not being able to get through the day, not being able to get through a meeting. And I haven't ever really returned to that person, to be honest, that I was before then. However, I have gained lots more than I had, and that has been able to give me like different opportunities in life and new
Hmm.
experiences. So, and it got me to here, after doing that, that's what led me to work in mental health education. To kind of, I think a lot of people that work in mental health have experienced it and they want to give
Hmm.
back. So I think to deal with that, you have to accept that situation, which is really hard to accept that that's where you are, and go into therapy or read your books, learn strategies, do what
Hmm.
you can, focus on yourself to heal. And then eventually, after all the pain and you're out of the worst of it,
Hmm.
you can reflect and realize the strengths that you've gained. Uh, I don't even know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I believe so. What all
Just one.
Yeah, and I feel like that acceptance piece that you mentioned is really important, and it's a difficult one to reach. And I know that, when I deal with clients personally, sometimes when I propose the idea of acceptance, we always have this kind of visceral, like knee-jerk reaction of just like, well, no, I can't kind of accept where things are at. And I feel like a lot of us can kind of get stuck there where we are like, well, there must be a possibility. There must be a way of changing this. And it's like that, like we talk about like the traditional, stages of grief, we talk about like that denial stage. I'm just like, there must be something that I can do here. Um, if you don't mind, what did that process kind of look like for you when you were trying to, when you finally got to that point where you accepted that you had to leave this job that you really loved, for Children's Hospice, correct?
Yeah.
Right. What did that look like for you having to get to that acceptance point?
It was a grieving process. There was lots of involved because, as a lot of your listeners will know, that have experienced mental health challenges. When that happens to you, you get a lot of stigma, like, and
Hmm.
because you're kind of a different person, so all of a sudden people can't trust that you're confident, or they can't trust that you're
Hmm.
going to see something through. So you're hit. Not only are you hit with this mental health challenge, you're also
Hmm.
hit with perception, a different perception, and being treated differently by a lot of different people.
Hmm.
And I sort of just came to the realization that I needed to heal, and I didn't need to worry about anybody else, that there was too much pressure to, it was kind of like holding expectations. It's almost like a status, it's almost like I'd worked my whole life to get there. I got
Hmm.
exactly what I wanted,
Right.
and then I couldn't do it anymore. But so it was hard. But so what I did was, I'm a reader, so that's my coping mechanism. If I
Hmm.
need I go to books. So I think I read every single book on anxiety that possibly existed.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that made me realize that actually I needed to focus on myself.
Mm. Yeah.
And then so reading these books made me think, okay, you know what? That's just a point in time. And I I can and I think it's hope as well. You've got to be hopeful that, that panic attack happened in a split second, that first one. That does, and anything good can happen in a split second as
Hmm.
well, and you don't know when it's going to happen. So I had to hope, and sometimes other people had to hold that hope for me and remind me that if I left this stuff behind, I could find something else that was just as fulfilling and meaningful at some point. You don't know when that's going to be, but
Hmm.
you just got to hope, I suppose, that it will come,
Yeah.
because you've got to prioritize yourself, because if you don't prioritize yourself, then it might not come. So
Right, right, right. And we got to recognize that dichotomy, going back to kind of like the catastrophizing conversation that, yes, it might be that I don't find anything that feels this fulfilling. There's also completely the possibility that I will, and that perhaps I might even find something that's even more fulfilling than what I'm doing right now.
yeah, absolutely. You never know. You absolutely never know. And I'm it's weird, but I'm kind of grateful for that experience now,
Mm-hmm.
because actually, I did go on to do fulfilling work, and I was able to do that. And things can change. Things can change.
Hmm. Absolutely. And so, I mean, you've gone from, working in children's hospice, then you went to the recovery college, and now you are in the coaching position. Um, what is it, I guess, how does this position feel compared to those positions that you previously worked? Are there things that you pull from those experiences? Are there things that maybe you had to kind of get used to for the first time? What's that process been like?
Yeah, it's so different working for yourself,
Hmm.
than working for, statutory. I've always been a social worker or worked in a third sector, so uh, I've always worked in an institution, if you like,
Hmm.
or an organization. And but I've learned so much through my experiences, professionalism, all the different things that people experience. So it's the same as your role as a social worker, as a counselor, as a therapist. You are in such a privileged position where you see people at their most vulnerable times, and you see people that have experienced a wide range of stuff. So you take that deep respect and the stories, and the boundaries and what you've learned on how people react and how people respond to situations, and you take something from everybody that you know that you've worked with right through. So it's just the experience and years, I think, that have really helped me to
Mm,
then have the confidence to set up my own business.
right. You've had that experience being in these one-on-one situations, seeing people when they are, at, like you said, like at their most vulnerable, and they're sharing these kinds of things with you. Um, it sounds like that's something that's been kind of consistent throughout.
Yeah, and knowing, having empathy to be able to put yourself in people's shoes a little bit, because
Mm,
knowing how hard it is for someone to
right.
recognize that something needs to change and reach out to a therapist or reach out to a coach. They just know that something's got to be different,
Mm,
and that's so hard for people. And knowing how hard that is
mhm.
is I think one of the most important things as well, that I can carry, so you can be completely present with somebody and understanding of where they're at.
Right. And I think we all need those ways of kind of connecting with our clients, because sometimes, it's at the end of the day, what we're doing is a job, but we want to be able to continue to treat it as more than just a job. We want to be able to maintain that empathy and be able to maintain that connectedness with our clients. And I know one of the things that we talk about all the time in the therapeutic field is burnout and the danger of burnout, because it can take that away from you very quickly. Uh, so, are there things that you do to try to kind of maintain that empathy to try to avoid that burnout?
Yeah, so I I think, yeah, because what I like about your channel is because you talk about it a lot as well, just bringing your humanity. You're a very real person, and bring your humanity to your work as well,
Mm,
which I think is really important. And if you are bringing yourself, your complete self, then you have to look after yourself as well. And
mm,
for me, that is, uh, I go to therapy. I've been going to therapy for a while now. Carving out space and time for mindfulness activities you really
mm,
enjoy. Um, I try and practice what I preach. So connection is a huge part of resilience, and
mm,
being able to increase and maintain your resilience. And I'm not always the best, to be honest, at uh, keeping connections with people.
sure.
So I'm just not that sociable. However, I make a point of seeing where perhaps weaknesses are, and I don't want to do it, but I know the theory, I know the science. This is going to be good
Mm,
for me, so I try and put myself in a situation
mm,
and do something that's going to go towards that.
mm.
Which isn't always easy to do. Sometimes it's easier to stay in your comfort zone.
Yes.
But I try to do things regularly that is practicing what I preach.
Right. And it is really important for us to do that work, just to kind of keep tabs on ourselves, because we're important too. Um,
Yeah.
how do you balance, I guess, the business side of things as well? Because I mean, with being you're a coach on one side, and then you're also a business owner, and I wonder how you balance all of that.
That's hard, to be honest,
I
because
bet.
when you become self-employed, all of a sudden you don't have a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 anymore.
Hmm.
You have a 24-hour, 7 day week job,
Hmm.
um, and you have to be everything. And I don't think I really considered this when I opened the business, that you have to be everything. You have to do the job, but you have to do the marketing. You have
Hmm.
to. Every job is yours, and you're good at doing the core work because that's what you've been trained to do and that's what you're used to, but you don't have any experience in the other stuff. So
Hmm.
I work a lot more than I did, but I try and find some pleasure in it. So I
Hmm.
try and make things into a little game
Hmm.
or
Okay.
to try and get through the stuff that perhaps I'm not so good at. um, and I do have, I learned this thing through business, that you have to have a list of preservation goals.
Mm.
So preservation goals are things that no matter what happens, you're not going to miss it. So for
Hmm.
some people, that might mean, they go and watch their kid play football on a Saturday morning or something. That's their preservation goal. No matter what comes through the door,
Mm.
nothing's doing that. So So I've got a list of things that I will protect and do no matter what. So that helps with the balance, um,
Mm,
making things enjoyable. Um, and also there is just a general pleasure of being completely able to decide where I take the business. You know, I
mhm,
decide what my values and principles are. Um, I decide what to do with the business and what good I can do with it,
mhm.
and who I can help through it. Uh, yeah, that kind of flexibility is nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's I guess it's two-sided. You have to work a lot more, but at the same time, you get that flexibility to decide where things go and what you preserve, and you are the
Yeah,
ultimate decider in all of that.
yeah, which is scary but great.
Yes, and I'm approaching the point now where I'll have my independent licensure, because we have like our provisional and then we have the independent, and I'll have it here in just a couple months, and I floated the idea of like, do I want to go into private practice one day? And it really does scare me so much having to handle all of it, and like if anything goes wrong, that was me. Like if anything needs to be done, it I need to do it. And it that really does scare me a lot thinking about that. Um, I imagine that probably took some steps for you as well, being able to accept that. Okay, if I'm going into this, I'm taking on everything.
Yeah, you know what? And I think there was definitely some naivety around it. And there are
Mm.
definitely some things that I had no idea that I needed to
uh,
do. um, but you know what? It's fine. You just have to make a decision that you're all in,
hmm.
and you've got it's that word hope again. You've got to
Right,
hope that you put the work in. It's going to be okay. You do your best. It's going to be okay.
right. I can appreciate that.
It's
I
sounds
can.
really big.
Yeah. I could definitely I can appreciate that, and I like the I hear kind of like the stoicism coming out again when you're talking about the things that you don't necessarily like to do. Treating it like a game or like a challenge, as like the Stoics would,
Yeah.
and being able to kind of take it on that way. Um, so I know you mentioned kind of bring the conversation even back to values. What do you find you want your business to represent, or what kind of values you want to be able to represent?
Yeah, the most important thing for me was to be community facing. Like that's
Hmm.
so important to me. And even though I'm kind of in the private sector now, I'm still a social worker, so I've still got those values that that want to do good. So I'm not always a great business person. So I've got this shop, and um, I've got a load of kind of books, self-help books, books that have helped me, books that I know have helped other people in mental health.
Hmm.
And people get to talking to me, and I might give them a book. And I mean, I don't charge for it, but so I'm not always the greatest of business, but it's more important for me to be for mental health, well-being, to be accessible.
Mm.
So that's in my head. I want to be community facing, accessible, and when I earn some money to
Mm.
be able to put that back into the community in kind of grassroots kind of
Mm.
activities. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, because we are, at the end of the day, we are a part of that community. If we were to think about the place where we live as, as one single organism, we are doing our part to maintain the health of that organism. And I love to hear that, that is part of the mission. I feel like that, just kind of thinking about it, I imagine that would be one of the things that would help you to stay rooted and stay connected to the work that you're doing and be able to maintain that empathy, because it's not so much about, you know, here's a client, this is what the session represents, they are my 9 to 10 o'clock, anything like that. It represents far more than that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's just, knowing that everybody's got their stuff as well.
Mm,
Everybody's going through a really difficult time for various reasons. And, I want my work, my shop, my business, I want it to be like a safe space for everybody,
right.
inclusive, safe space for everybody. or just a basic respect that it's
Mm,
you treat everybody as the human, the individual human that they are.
mm. I love that, and we need a lot of that nowadays. It's there can be so much toxicity in so many different places, and so to be able to be just one part of a safe haven, I feel like that can mean a lot for people. So I really appreciate that you come from that perspective. Um, so I would love to be able to talk a little bit about your experience with therapy, not going into specifics
Mhm.
of like what did you talk about on this day, if you're open to that.
Yeah, yeah, I can talk about therapy.
Wonderful.
Sure.
So what was it like, I guess, for you being a new client? You know, you talked about the it can be really difficult for our clients to come to us and to have this experience with therapy. And so I wonder what it was like for you going in, if you had conceptions about it, any, yeah, just what was that experience like?
Yeah, I'll tell you because I haven't had the best experience. It's interesting because I was watching one of your TikToks the other
Oh yeah.
day about the poor experiences that you've had with therapists, right?
Yes.
And when I was first thinking about going to therapy, I actually had no idea what kind of therapy I needed. So first of all, we had this service in the UK called the Wellbeing Service.
Okay.
It's a free service. You can self-refer, and then you kind of have like group psychoeducation, CBT, and then you can then move on to the next stage and have individual CBT sessions. So I've done CBT, but to be honest, that didn't help me very much.
Hmm.
I feel like it could sometimes help me in a moment if I remembered
Hmm.
it to get myself out of some anxiety or something. But I don't suppose it really helped me any deeper than that.
Hmm.
And then I was so desperate. Anybody that experiences, anxiety, depression, anything like that, there's a desperation of just needing it gone.
Right.
So
Yes.
I went through this process of, oh, what's just gonna get it gone? So then I thought I'd go to hypnotherapy, right?
Hmm.
So I went to hypnotherapy, and honestly, the therapist was so arrogant.
Oh
He
no.
he basically said to me, "There's nobody he can't fix,
Ooh.
nobody," and that
Sheesh.
he can do so he can do anything. I was like, okay, well, I need my anxiety gone, and I need to stop having to take like beta blockers, just to calm it down
Yeah.
in some stressful situations. And he said, yeah, no, this is easy. And then turned out he couldn't really do it. He couldn't get rid of it,
Mm.
but he blamed me. Um,
Wow.
uh, he said that uh, and I don't know that there is that school of thought, isn't there? You will know more about this than me. That sometimes you hold on to stuff because it's serving you in some way.
Hmm.
I don't know, but
Sure.
the way he said it was just like it's my fault. And then
Hmm.
he said, "Oh, try and go down to half a pill one day, but text me if it doesn't work, and we'll have another session." So it didn't work, and I texted him, but he basically ghosted me.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah, he never replied, but I think that was more on him because
Yes.
he had said that there hasn't been anybody that he hasn't been able to get
Right.
rid of anything, and it turns out he couldn't. So I don't know whether that was a self-preservation thing for him to,
Hmm.
to not to
Right.
not help me. But
I I would have to
anyway,
bet. I would have to bet. Yeah. Goodness.
and after that, I thought, okay, I need a different therapist, and I went to a guy, and we did some EMDR, but it
Hmm.
didn't work because I don't know, it didn't work.
Hmm.
Uh, or maybe maybe there wasn't a specific trauma that I could think of or I could hold on to as such as
Hmm.
to why. So maybe that didn't work. So I had about 3 or 4 sessions with him. And then about a year ago, I decided to look again for a therapist and I came across. But by then, I'd started to realize that you can't just intellectualize your way out of stuff, which
Hmm.
is again what you talk about a lot, which I
Hmm.
think is what I was doing. I know every strategy. I know, I've read every book.
Hmm.
Um, but actually, I kind of need to feel this now. So I was looking for a therapist actually that was perhaps a bit deeper, or a bit spiritual, or a bit more somatic in their way of
Hmm.
working. So I came across this therapist, and yeah, he introduced IFS to me,
Hmm.
and IFS has been if people don't know internal family systems,
Hmm.
it's been a game changer. It really has. It's been amazing actually. Uh, yeah.
Wow. I and so with internal family systems, it's a lot of people sometimes, again, for people listening, sometimes people can refer to it as like the parts work. We acknowledge
Yeah.
those different parts of ourselves that are doing these different jobs, and we try to work within that as a way of being able to cope with things. Um, are there ways? Are there ways that you feel like IFS really worked for you, or like I guess are there components about it that you feel like clicked for you more than like CBT, hypnotherapy, EMDR?
Yeah, I think, the first thing that hit me was that in IFS, they basically believe that every single person has these innate qualities and that you're born with them, you have them, there's no way you can get rid of them. Um, which, as a starting point, was pretty good for me because when you're in a headspace where you can't think about, someone says, oh, you're compassionate, or you're a creative, and if you're in a headspace, it's just like, no, no, no.
Hmm.
um, I'm not any of those things. But knowing that is the basis is that you are, perhaps you just don't have access to it at the moment, or perhaps you don't know how to utilize it at the moment. So knowing that there were some innate good qualities
Hmm.
within me was actually kind of nice. So that was a good starting point. And then, when he first introduced it to me, I thought that it was ridiculous, to be honest. I
Hmm.
did. I thought that you want me to talk to,
Sure.
you what?
Uh-huh. That
and
that's fair. That's fair.
and they're gonna answer me?
Uh-huh.
What? Surely not.
Hmm.
Um, so the first time I tried it, I was I because I hadn't quite believed in it, and I hadn't quite been able to let go. So it was a bit hard. But then I went all into it, and I talked to this anxious part of me. And so in IFS, ask you ask this part what it wants you to know, and then your part tells you. And then these parts are often younger, and sometimes they forget that you've grown up now. And so asking the part how old it is and how old it thinks you are can
Mm.
be really good, and knowing that is really helpful because this part of me, this anxious part, I was talking to my anxious part at 7 years old, and it thought that I was 13.
Mm.
So being able to work with it, remind it that I'm an adult, remind it that I've got all the skills now, and it doesn't have to protect me like it needed to as a child. And I asked the 7-year-old me. We were walking in the woods, and the 7-year-old me was kicking up leaves. I asked it what it needed, and she told me that she needed me to play more, to have more
Mm.
fun, and which then gets you reflecting on your childhood. I think I'm quite a serious person, didn't
Hmm.
play very much, and then so I just started feeding the parts of me that I recognize.
Mm.
I get to know them every day. I talk to them now. Um,
Mm.
I get to know them. They get to know me. I ask them what they need. They do actually tell you. And then
Wow.
if I make an effort to do what they've asked me to do, like have more fun, play more,
Hmm.
then it does reduce my anxiety. It does make me calmer. It does help with my mental health a lot.
Wow. Because I mean, it sounds like you're connecting with yourself on a much deeper level than maybe you used to be connecting.
Yeah, in fact, I think I spent quite a lot of the last 2 or 3 years not connected at all.
Mm.
I think a lot of us can walk around completely numb, not being able to feel parts of your body, not being able to, yeah, just not being connected or trying to zone out. We all use
Hmm.
coping mechanisms to zone out, don't we? Like TV, eating, drinking, whatever it is, we're trying to
Hmm.
escape from. Um, but then when you realize that actually, and then the famous book is called No Bad Parts. And when you're talking to them, you understand the reasons why they are playing the role they are. They've always got good intentions, and you can become much more compassionate towards the parts that you consider bad.
Mm.
Um, and then you're connecting more, and you're kind of feeling more in harmony with them,
Right. Right.
which, yeah, which has been incredible. Actually, it's been an incredible shift.
And when you were, I mean, as we were talking about with self-compassion, I imagine that, having that shift of, thinking about me currently, who I am sitting here in this chair with these thoughts that I have, having compassion for that guy is different than having compassion for, this inner child that I have. It really shifts the way that I think about myself. And is that how you experienced it as well?
Yeah, yeah, because before, if I just see myself as I am now,
Mm,
it's easy not to feel the compassion because you don't always look at yourself in the reasons why. You know, we're automatically hardwired to think of the mistakes we've made, or all the difficult things we've gone through, and all the negative stuff. Whereas if you think about yourself more in the parts of you, as individual parts of you, and the
right.
reasons why they've
Mm-hmm.
had to do certain things, then you can feel much more compassion for yourself sitting here. But you almost have to, I almost have to go to them first to then feel compassion for the me now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but with more practice, I think it will just come more easily that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Right. It becomes the new reflexive coping skill,
yeah,
versus the zoning out, the eating, the drinking, um, which I
yeah,
mean, it's difficult for us to give up on those things, or at least for us to want to replace them, um, because it works for us. Going and just flying through life, not recognizing what day it is, just going and going and going. That can at times feel a lot easier than the self-reflection and the self-compassion. But at the
mhm,
same time, it holds us back from really being able to reach this deep place where we might find things like that self-compassion and these new ways of connecting with, like, instead of me ignoring what I need, what if I were to stop myself and actually really contemplate what I need right now and take that really seriously?
yeah, yeah. It makes a huge difference.
Mm.
And it's not easy. We can't pretend it's easy. It's not.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah.
some of those coping skills I would say are good. It's just
Sure.
about whether you do them with intention or not.
Right.
um, and you're choosing, I'm going to do this for a couple of hours instead of it being your constant state of being,
Sure.
if you like.
Sure.
uh,
Right. Um, I also wonder, I guess, one of the things, like you had mentioned, we've been talking a lot about intellectualization over on TikTok, and just, and for people who are kind of wondering what that is, the sometimes us learning so much about our conditions and just treating our conditions and our mental health and just who we are as being something in like a book where I can kind of read all these things and I know that book front to back, but I don't really connect with it in a deeper way. And so I guess I wonder for you if intellectualization is something that it sounds like you've said you do, you've read every book on anxiety, all of that. Has IFS helped you to work around that? Or I guess work with it rather.
yeah, it 100% has. Like as you say, you can read every book, and I think I have, but if you don't actually practice it, like all the strategies all the time, if you don't connect with it on some way, none of it's going to help you. um,
Mm,
and I think you have to get into your body. There are so many strategies which might help in a moment. So I've got strategies that will bring me out of a panic attack,
mm-hmm,
or I've got strategies that will stop me getting really, really deep in rumination, or really deeply into a really sad episode. Um,
mm,
but that's just in the moment. It's not lasting. And I think
mm,
getting into your body, and IFS teaches you to, what's the trailhead? They call them trailheads. So it's either a thought or a feeling in the body. And then if it's a thought, you try and find where it is in the body as well. So
mm-hmm,
being able to find where something is in your body, whether that's tension, anxiety, whatever it is, really helps you practice those skills.
mm,
But it's one of the few things that I've really stuck with. Um, so I've tried meditation before. Meditation's kind of hard for me. I've tried to
mm-hmm,
sit down every day to do it. But I can sit down every day and talk to my parts.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's finding what works for you, I guess, and what feels right to you. But it's certainly definitely done that for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really happy to hear that you've had that experience. Um, yeah, that can be really difficult, and I know that the sitting with ourselves can be very difficult, and I agree that I feel like I used to come from a really like cognitive behavioral approach because that's kind of like that was the first therapy I think that I learned about within my master's program, and it was and has always really been pushed as being like the gold standard for like this. If there's something going on, this will probably be able to really do the trick. And it's helped me out a lot personally, and I still use CBT with myself a lot. Um, but I do agree. I feel like connecting somatically is really important. And it's, I think, the missing building block that a lot of people need when they can't just kind of think their way out of a situation. Or, like you mentioned, when you're having a panic attack, sometimes, we can recognize that this is a fleeting event. This is going to end. There's going to come a point where I'm not going to feel like this anymore. And at the same time, sometimes it can help to have alongside that some of the somatic things to help us through that experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think since I learned that, and sometimes it's so uncomfortable that you don't want to know that that's the solution, because
Hmm.
actually some feelings are just so overwhelming.
Yes.
You don't know what to do with them. You would do anything not to
Hmm.
not to feel
Oh yeah.
them. Um, so it's really hard. It's really hard. But
Hmm.
since I realised that that's probably going to be the way for me to heal,
Right.
then
Right.
it has it has done a lot for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Um, I certainly share that experience as somebody who was intellectualized for a very long time, and being very afraid of feeling these things. And I've done so many things over the years to cover up the way that I felt. Um, you know, it is genuinely intimidating, but being able to really just connect with it and find ways of not making the emotion go away, but being able to tolerate the emotion and allow it to run its course, allow it to give you the information that it wants to give you, and then working with it from there. I think that as far as a cognitive piece, that's been a big shift for me. That's allowed me to focus more on the somatic aspect. So, as we kind of come to an end today with this conversation, which uh, I greatly, greatly appreciate you coming on and sharing so much of your experience of how you look at the therapeutic field, how you have experienced this field, and just being willing to share so much of your story. I really appreciate it so much. Um, if there's anything that you would want to kind of leave people with in terms of, self-esteem, compassion, resiliency, anything, what do you feel like you would like to leave people with today?
You know what? If I just had one message, it would be connect with people, connect with nature. Just find a way to connect, and feel in your body and connect with others, because I honestly feel like connection is one of the biggest keys to coping
Hmm.
coping with stuff, having that support network. And I know it's hard because I would say that I don't exactly have a whole load of friends. I don't have a whole load of confidants. I don't have I'm I can be really socially awkward. I can't.
Hmm.
I don't find it the easiest to connect with people. But if I would say, if you can just try one small thing to connect in a different way every day with something or someone, then try and do that. Is what I would say.
Hmm. That's an amazing message. That's an amazing message. Wonderful. Well, Brianne, anything you would like to plug here at the end of the podcast? Your socials, anything like that?
Uh, yeah, I mean, you can. This is Breanne Cooke, pretty much on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Um, yeah, or the Pied Wagtail is my shop. Um, I'm not really a big plugger, but I love to connect with people. So
Hmm.
if anyone wants to come over, just say hi or whatever. That's awesome. And thank you. I really appreciate this. I've really enjoyed
Yeah.
talking with you, and I've enjoyed watching these and watching your content as well. So
Wonderful.
thanks to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, again, I appreciate you being here. So, Breanne Cook, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to all of those listening. This has been the Please Stay Inside podcast. Again, I am Rob, and we will talk with you later. Take care of yourselves. Take care.